Hey everyone, John for Popeyes Postcards. We're going to continue on with our third installment of beginning guide to selling postcards. So on this third section here, we're going to talk about how postcards are made. In the second one that you just hopefully watched, you learned about the postcard eras. So now we're going to talk about how they're made. And there's pretty much three basic production methods. I'm sure there's a lot more, but three basic ways are lithography, photography, and then photochromes. Those are going to be your three basic types of postcards. With lithography, it's a litho print. Big printing machines, figure your newspaper, stuff like that, magazines. And there's many varieties of litho printing, but pretty much basically, if you look through your um, magnifying glass, which I highly recommend getting a magnifying glass. I personally like this one. Has 30, 60, 90 power loops with built-in light, but definitely get yourself a magnifying glass. So when you look through these magnifying glass at the postcards, if you see this type of dots or squiggles, it's litho print. And the best place, if you want to know more than you'd ever really want to know about postcards and how they were made, go to Metro Postcard Club or .com, put on by the Metropolitan Postcard Club out of New York. They have a whole guide to postcard printing techniques, but I just want to give you the very basics. So that was Litho Prints, and they can tell you all about, again, more on that site. Next, photography. They're real photo postcards, RPPC. It drives me up a wall when people say real picture postcards. It's it's photo. They are photographs. They are real photo postcards, not real picture postcards. If you want to use that term, that's fine, but I'm just telling you, you go to a postcard show or talk to other postcard people, and you say picture post or a real picture, they're going to look at you funny. So correct terminology, they are real photo postcards. When you look through your handy dandy magnifying glass at a real uh, photo postcard, you're going to see a sharp image, very clear lines. There's not going to be squiggles. Uh, you're just going to be able to tell it's a real photo. So this is a blown up part of the real photo. They've been around since really uh, early 1900s. Some 1890s, you'll find real photos, but pretty much some guy would roll up to your town in their covered wagon and would maybe spend the day in your town. Now that's if your town didn't already have their own photographer or own postcard place. But most of these traveling photographers, they'd take pictures of the church, the town hall, the street views, wherever, and then they would sell them out of the back of their wagon. And some of them may have then sold numerous copies to the druggist or the drugstore, the pharmacist at the bookstore, stuff like that. And some of these cards may only have a very limited run of 25, 50 cards, something like that. So those old pre 1920s real photos, some of those can be worth lots of money because there weren't a whole bunch made, and they're of interesting views. And you're going to see this is like a perfect example. A photographer was in town that date, or there was a photographer already in that town, and they go out to the railroad wreck, the train wreck that just happened, or the fire that just happened. They're able to capture just minutes of history in a photograph, and they'll develop it that day in the back of their little wagon there and sell the cards, for a penny or two. And within a day or two, you were able to have send your other relatives in another state images of something that just happened in your town. And of course, you could have a photo studio in your town. These are probably mostly along, the boardwalks and in tourist towns, I should say. So you go in there with your buddy and you sit down at a studio, and there's props. You've seen people sitting on motorcycles. You've seen them sitting in crescent moons. Sometimes they do dress up. Here's some guy with a bottle of whiskey with his buddy. And you come back in maybe 5-10 minutes and they have your postal card ready. These are really one-offs. You might have got another copy for you and your buddy, but there are only a couple made. So that's why some of those studio photos, especially of the crescent moon, people sitting on the crescent moon or the paper moon, whatever you want to call it, can do really well. And then people had the opportunity to make their own postcards. So here's an ad for the folding pocket Kodak, and you could now have your own, make your own postcards. And they sold postcard paper that you could, again, pretty much make your own postcard. And we're going to show you, I think this is a homemade postcard from someone's camera. It's not a studio photo. It's two guys outside their house. There's a big white section on the right side, and I think that's just because the camera could only use that amount of space from the lens aperture. So just something to keep an eye out for. And then real photo postcards were also mass produced. Here's one of a pharmacy, Todd's Pharmacy in Michigan. So probably from the 40s or 50s, they'd take the negative back, and they were able to then put it through a high-speed photo machine. Kind of think about going to CVS or one of those old photo huts, the little pull-up photo huts in the parking lots. Just hand them off your old film to be developed, and they would just put it through a machine, and it would print off, your real photos pretty quick. In some real photos, there's going to be some confusing similarities. These are both litho prints, but when you look at them through a magnifying glass, this is what they look like. Those could easily be confused with real photos, but if you just look a little closer, it's not as sharp. The lines aren't as sharp. There's more squiggles, stuff like that. So you can definitely tell a litho print from a real photo, but sometimes they're confusing. You got to look for the silvering on the real photos. You can see around the edges of this card, there's like a silvering look to it, and if you tilt it back and forth in the light, you can definitely tell the silvering. And of course, you can look at the back of the postcard, and if there's a stamp box, pretty much real photos just look this way. The postcard word, it's like a double lined letters, and then you have a stamp box here with the manufacturing of that paper, and there's a website out there which is listed at there, plale.com/real-photo, and it has a listing of probably 300 or 400 stamp boxes used on the backs of photo paper. There's just some more examples, and then you can use that to date. And then Photochromes, this is pretty much your chromolithography. This is your 1950s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s chrome. Again, there's different ways they manufactured them. People mistakenly call them RPPCs because they look like your photos that you would get from when you take your film to Walmart or Photo Hut or wherever. But when you look through those photos and you look through magnifying glass at these postcards, you'll see the squiggly printer dots. So that's it for how postcards were made. I'm sure you could find a video like how it's made and actually see the actual printing process, but this is just basically how these are made. Next, we'll get into dating postcards.